Welcome to the Dojo, the podcast where we turn marketing news into marketing tasks that can help you achieve your marketing goals. This week we'll hear 3 stories, one from myself, and one from Tim Cameron Kitchen, and one from Jess Percival. We all work for Exposure Ninja, your favorite marketing agency. Let's get straight into the stories. Tim, what's your story for this week?
Lessons from UK election digital advertising.
Should be a fierce one. Jess, your story for this week?
Mine is Scot Rail, which is Scottish Rail, Scot Rail, and Swiftonomics, and I will not be elaborating on that.
And my story this week is going to be about Apple's developer conference, WWDC. So warnings from Apple's developer conference. I'm not going to pick myself to go first. Tim, take it away.
Okay, so I've been really enjoying a lot of the conversation around the UK election. I'm not political in any way. I've never voted and don't intend to start now. But one thing that has intrigued me is the digital advertising in politics has been sort of steadily increasing in quality, I would say, over the years. And I think Cambridge Analytica was a genius marketing plan. I'm not going to say it was like good genius, but it was really clever. The whole data capture thing and the micro segmentation of audiences, from a marketer's perspective, loads to learn about that, and loads to I want to say admire, because obviously it was very bad and it was illegal and all that type of thing, but savvy, right? And I think a lot of political parties have learned some of the lessons of that campaign, namely that digital advertising allows such tight segmentation of target audiences. And the FT ran a fascinating article this week where they did some real, I'm going to say this was ninja grade analysis on, in particular, Labour and Conservatives and their use of advertising on Meta, so Facebook, and Instagram, and I found it sort of really interesting, some of the things that they identified, and in particular I found it fascinating how so many of the key principles that we use when we're doing digital marketing for clients apply just as much, if not more, to politics. So what I thought I'd do is take us on a bit of a tour of some of the key principles that these ads are using from what I can see from this analysis. Is everybody ready?
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a disclaimer here just to back up what Tim said before. Everything Tim's gonna say is not gonna be in for or against a particular party. I think This is knowing Tim. This is gonna be very much like, here's the thing, here's what they're saying. He's not condoning or supporting or uncondoning, I don't know what the opposite is, any of these. So just I thought I should say that just in case.
All of the yellow branding that's Liberal Democrat colours, just a coincidence. Not trying to give you any subliminal messages here.
Yeah, our political colour is black. It's the absence of political messaging. Absolutely what Jess said. I have my relationship to politics is sort of an outside observer watching it all with bemusement and interest, really. So I think some of the key themes that have emerged from watching these ads, and I've got some specific examples that I can talk through for people who are listening, but in particular, there was some analysis about spending in the early days after the election was called. So for those outside the UK, or for those who don't know, there's essentially a period of time from when an election is called to when I think Parliament is dissolved, when political parties can just go all out on advertising spend. And then once Parliament has been dissolved, they have to sort of chill out with their spend. What happened is the party that is in charge and called the election, the Conservatives, were massively outspent by Labour. As soon as this election was called, Labour started ploughing so much cash into digital marketing, spending up to around 240k a day, which might not sound like loads for, it does sound like loads, but it might not sound like loads for some, huge advertisers. But for a political party, particularly one that's not like actually in power, there's this fair chunk of cash. They clearly had their campaigns very well planned out. They had their audiences targeted. They had their ads set up, and this thing was just ready to go. And they rolled this out really quickly, and they increased their spend through Meta at a really rapid rate. Whereas the Conservatives seem to be they seem to be caught off guard by the fact that this election was even called, and they ramped up their spending much more closely. But the most interesting thing, I think, is how that budget was spent. So what Labour decided to do, in fact, let me just share my screen so those who are watching this can see it. For those who aren't, that's fine. I'm just going to talk you through it. But what Labour decided to do was spend their money on candidate campaigns. Okay, so you may be able to see this. I'm just going to zoom in so it's a bit more obvious. So here's the chart of spending. So this point is when the election was called. This is when Parliament was dissolved. So they basically had this period where they could spend as much as they want. So Labour spent a reasonable amount of money promoting their main party page, but the vast majority of their budget went into promoting Labour candidates, so their own ad campaigns. And this reminds me of in when you're doing like e-commerce marketing on Facebook, for example. One of the most effective ways to spend ad budget can actually be to promote influencers that are promoting you, right? So you're not necessarily promoting your brand page, you're promoting whitelisted influencers. And it's really interesting. That's exactly what Labour did, whereas Conservatives didn't really spend as much, but they definitely didn't spend as much promoting individual candidates. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that both of these parties have a very distinct target audience. So Labour will tend to target younger voters. Conservatives will tend to target older voters. There is some crossover. But it's been fascinating to see how, because their audience skews in slightly different directions, and they've picked messages which are most likely to resonate with each of these audiences. Now, in politics, this is fairly obvious, but I don't think many businesses actually think about this. Think about segmenting their audience. Maybe it's by age, maybe it's by location, maybe it's by gender, and using specific messages to target those audiences. So, for example, Conservatives will often talk about illegal, in fact, both parties, when they're talking to older voters, will talk about illegal immigration, they'll talk about the monarchy, pensions, things that older voters care about. Whereas younger voters are like, well, tax, pensions, I don't care. What the younger voters respond better to is things like cost of living and rent in particular, much more likely to respond to that type of thing. Now, one of the most contentious policies from the Conservatives has been to bring back the idea of national insurance. And the Labour Party here have produced, I think,
National
one of
service.
the finest
Tim means national service.
What did I say?
National insurance.
National insurance. I'm in national service. I mean, going to war, not paying for the NHS. So the Conservatives have thought, right, young people are, lazy, and this is likely to resonate with an older audience. What they need is a good kick up the behind and go out to war, and that should sort them out. Now, the Labour Party have jumped on this, and they've got a fantastic ad, which is being slightly cut off on this screen, but the wording is basically, it's your choice. Would you rather, and then there's a picture of vote for your future, which is Labour, or go to war, and there's a picture of someone with a gun for Conservatives. And I think that perfectly encapsulates the sort of emotive issues that they're trying to target here, basically presenting them as a choice for freedom, and the Conservatives, their opposition, as they're going to send you to war and be shooting guns. So this made me think about a lot of businesses, and when we're running ads, we're not necessarily looking for those sort of emotional hot button topics as much. Whereas actually sometimes you'll see an ad run by a company which has chosen a common enemy. And these can be really emotive ads. And the common enemy can be something as simple as, if you're selling a time-saving app or something, the common enemy can be burnout. Or if you're selling, I don't know, like agency, for example, the enemy might be wasted marketing spend. But it's very rare that we try and tap into emotions in our ad campaigns as much as these political parties are. For example, the Conservatives, a lot of their ads just show the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, they just show his face. And it's almost like they're just trying to resonate with that audience that just see this guy's face and react strongly to it. And then that will be enough to get them voting. Labour do exactly the same. They show a picture of the Conservative leader's face looking all sad in the rain when he was announcing the election. And that, they seem to think, is going to be enough to motivate people to vote. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the final thing I wanted to share about this was some fantastic use of social proof. We talk about social proof a lot in digital marketing, but there's some really creative use of social proof in these campaigns. In particular, both of these campaigns are using testimonials, live video testimonials from voters who previously voted for other parties but have switched allegiance to their parties. And I think this makes total sense, right? If you're, for example, there was a campaign, I think run by the Conservatives, where they'd found someone in Brighton who'd switched from the Green Party to Conservatives. And if I was running that campaign, I'd be running that ad to all the people that looked like on Facebook, looked like they'd be Green Party supporters. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to build up this impression that people are switching from Green Party to Conservatives, and then you give some sort of arguments to back that up. And I thought that's a really creative use. We often talk about using testimonials, but this could be used, for example, let's say you're a software company and you're a CRM and you're going up against Monday.com, or maybe you could have some ads from testimonials from people saying, yeah, I used to use Monday.com, but then I switched to happynewcrm.com, and it's really, really great. And then you could run those ads against Monday.com followers. So yeah, I just thought there's a lot to admire about this, whether or not you're political, whether you care about all of this stuff. It's just great to see some decent ads. And I'm personally glad that we have political parties that have finally sorted out their marketing. What do you guys think?
It's something that I've really noticed, and I was literally saying this to my partner yesterday, like, it's almost, especially with the smaller parties, it's so obvious who their audience is and who they're trying to target. And I was like, that is so interesting. Like, Liberal Democrats are so going all in on that younger audience, like on an unbelievable scale. Like, everything they're saying, everything they're doing, like whether that's where they're showing up, or, you know, they're going on roller coasters and they're doing a lot of things that are kind of funny, and, you know, they're kind of, their policies and their audience really align super well, and it's really clear on who they're trying to reach. And I just thought that was really interesting, and that it's very, like, it's almost a blueprint, isn't it, for how businesses should also be behaving. Like, they've pretty much got a list of these pain points, right? They're like, this is the pain that people are going through, and this is how we're going to solve it. And then they advertise that. And that's really what it boils down to, right? It's, really, really interesting. My housemate's been saying for weeks, so I wonder when Tim's going to talk about the election. And finally, today is the day, because the advertising has been so interesting. I think as well, it seems like the Conservative Party, like, turned their ads just fully off, just seemingly out of nowhere, which was very interesting. And I believe there's currently an AI politician or something running as an independent as well, which is great fun, isn't it? Really fun. But yes, there's all these interesting things that have been going on. So I have been really interested to hear your take. It's cool to hear about it. Thanks, Tim.
Glad to be of national service.
It's interesting because this might actually be the last general election in the UK before more stringent rules around AI usage come in. Next time around, there's going to be probably a lot more discussion around, you know, our manifesto covers this in more detail, and how political legislation around advertising in the run-up to election or during a parliament may change because of, you know, what may come in with the AI. Like, there may have to be like a tag to say that this is officially from this party, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like Jesse referenced before in previous podcasts about the, you know, preservatives free kind of messaging. Well, I can't remember what it was, but, you know, this political message is authentic, and there's an authenticity badge there and stuff like that. Like, that's going to probably come into it next. And as a consequence of, like, Cambridge Analytica beforehand, the rules around how political parties this time around have, you know, been changed. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks next. But what I see here is actually a mirroring of what we've seen through the evolvement of D2C and B2B in the last couple of years, where you've got companies borrowing heavily from the B2C space for B2B, and they're becoming much more aware of, like, oh my God, all of these strategies and tactics that work for this group, believe it or not, still work for this group. Like, it works for these people. Oh, believe it or not, the people in businesses are people too. Who knew? And they're just adapting and playing to those emotions as well. Crazy.
We're all just people, aren't we? We're all just people.
Most of us, yeah. How do we know that all three of us aren't just AI as well?
Don't
Probably
say
me
that.
stuttering and messing up my words is a good clue that I'm not AI. Okay, I'm going to
Or
take
is
us
it
on to
just
the
a double
next
bluff?
story then. Oh, we're talking over each other a lot today. This is what happens when you don't have a fourth person, a
We're not
guest in here.
polite. We're like, whatever. We'll talk over each other. We'll interrupt.
Yeah,
It's just how it is.
that's how you know we're not AIs. AIs would be polite. Anyway,
All right, let's go on to the next story. So, Jess, tell us about Scot Rail and Swiftonomics.
Yeah, so something that's quite funny about this story is, Dale, you kind of indirectly sort of led to this story in a way, because you messaged me. You live in Edinburgh, and you'd seen there was a lot of Taylor Swift related activity happening with the trains, and the platforms were really busy. And so it meant that when this story was also, so I just sort of saw it online and came into contact with it, I was like, that's really cool. So for those who don't know, Taylor Swift is doing a huge world tour at the moment. She is a singer-songwriter from the US, and pretty much her tour has been like record breaking in terms of how many people have attended, and there's been a consistent sort of economic upturn for cities and stuff that have Taylor Swift concerts in their cities. Some countries have seen like a massive increase in just generally like small businesses, but also big business, just the economy. The economy is impacted by Taylor Swift concerts. I think even at some point some earthquakes were measured and it was just Taylor Swift fans jumping up and down. Like genuinely, that is how intense it is. And I could tell a lot of stories about Taylor Swift concerts and the marketing and all that kind of stuff. And multiple times I've had a Taylor Swift story and then been like, oh, I'm going to talk about something else. But I thought this one was really fun because we managed to get a little bit of data from this. So Scot Rail, who are the rail system in Scotland, really went all in on the past, I think it was last week. There was 3 nights of Taylor Swift concerts, I believe. And a lot of them would be potentially traveling by train, but a lot of them also maybe wouldn't have even considered that. Maybe they'd be scared it's going to be too busy, or it's going to be too hectic, or the trains are going to get cancelled, and all this kind of stuff. So Scot Rail, who are already very active on Twitter, kind of doubled down on that, and they created guides on how to travel during the Taylor Swift concert, why you should travel by train, all the good things about that. They were doing they already do regular transport updates, but they were doing more based around the stations that Taylor Swift fans would be traveling to and from. They made custom PPE, like, they're like high-vis jackets that had like Taylor Swift quotes on the back, but maybe made them about like, hi, I can help you, which was really fun. And I think, it paid off because they said that they got tens of thousands of fans to 3 record attendance gigs and back again safely. And in fact, it was over 38,500 Taylor Swift fans used the train service to get to and from the gigs. And basically they did extra trains and carriages and just basically made it happen because they knew there was going to be this vast number of people. But it's what's really cool is they did the social media aspect and they did the marketing aspect, but then they also followed through on that, because it would have been a waste to do all this fun stuff and like make a poster of a bunch of trains based on the Eras Tour poster and, decorate. I mean, this is the trams are a separate thing, but they had Taylor Swift decals, like the whole tram was wrapped with her new album art and stuff. And if they would have done that, but then not actually delivered on the service and had loads of cancellations, nobody could get to where they wanted to. And like, trust me, I've got Taylor Swift tickets. This is big money and you do not want to miss any of it. So like, they needed to make sure people are having a good experience. And I thought it was a really great way to like change perceptions on a service that people are really struggling to appreciate and people are only using because they have to. People, tend to get very frustrated with the train service. I know I'm included in that. And I just thought it was a really fantastic campaign, as well as just jumping on current events. They could have just put the extra trains on and been like, whatever. But they really went like as all in as they possibly could. Like they were making friendship bracelets, which is really popular to make friendship bracelets and take a load to the concerts, give them out to the people around you. Purely based on one song lyric, it's just turned into like a national thing. I think somebody had tweeted like, or had asked a rail operator like, what is there a friendship bracelet making competition happening on the train because of how many people were like wearing them or making them. And they also, I thought it was a really great opportunity to connect with young people who maybe default to Uber, default to walk-in, default to the bus, who actually could be getting a better experience, hopefully, on the train. And also, I know a lot of these big cities, when it comes to these big events, they're like, we do not want people driving. Like, normally in Cardiff, which is my like closest city, they will be like, there's these areas you literally can't drive. You're not allowed to drive around there during a concert. There'll be huge fines because of the congestion, the issues it causes. I suppose you're probably like, well, what's in it for me? What's the benefit to me? The Scot Rail Twitter account actually shared their like reach, and I would say, there's no numbers, but based on the images and the bar chart, I would say they're probably getting 10 times the reach and engagement that they would normally be getting. And a lot of the sentiment was really positive. You know, a lot of people were like taking photos at the train stations and like tagging Scot Rail and being like, oh, we had a great time. We felt really comfortable. It was really lovely. Like, we weren't stressed at all. We were really worried, but we got there and it was amazing. Of course, there was a lot of disgruntled comments from people who were like, you don't do this when the football's on, and then Scot Rail coming back into it being like, actually we do, but we just don't do them this much because there's not 38,500 of you. But it was just very like really well done. It didn't feel like it was like, hello fellow kids, or like, you know, we're just trying to get involved and we have no idea what we're talking about. It really, really felt like they really understood the demographic. They understood the person, you know, they understood Taylor Swift enough to be able to make these connections and have a load of station themed posters and friendship bracelets and incorporate lyrics into the marketing and incorporate lyrics into their PPE. Like, are you kidding? You know, like, there was a lot of planning and dedication. It wasn't just like a last minute, oh god, we got to put some extra trains on. They really thought about it and really were like, how can we also profit from this event? And yeah, I just thought it was really, really cool. And I don't know if either of you are Taylor Swift fans or what your thoughts would be on this. I just thought it was really cool. And like I said, we're seeing it around the world. Every time there's a Taylor Swift concert, we see these promotions and stuff, and they seem to only have a net positive for the companies involved.
I'm a massive Taylor Swift fan, Jess. I've been listening to Taylor Swift since about 2010. I went to her first ever UK gig. Justin Bieber came on, broke his ankle, did the whole gig with a broken ankle. Anyway, I think this campaign's brilliant. And I don't know if they've looked at this when they were planning it. I would see it as an opportunity to get a whole bunch of people who maybe don't usually go on trains. And this is like a customer acquisition exercise. They're going to be going on a train. If we can make this experience as good as possible, then we have a opportunity to shape the habits in future. And everything about this campaign and this work seems to me to be, like you said, completely authentic. It's almost like the social accounts and all the planning and the design and everything. It just feels native to Taylor Swift. It could have been really awkwardly poked in there, as, you know, if you were trying to write this type of post about someone that you weren't really familiar with. The song lyrics that they've got loads of song lyrics that they're referencing. They've got pictures of trains looking over the fireworks going on in the stadium. Like, it could have been really awkward and a bit cringe, but it's worked really well. And they must have a Taylor Swift fan directing aspects of this for it to come across so native. So I'm a huge fan of this. I think it's really smart, and what a way to piggyback on something that already people have, you know, so much excitement over. There's that, you know, why is Coca-Cola always advertising at a football stadium? The thinking goes, I don't know how much sense this makes, but the thinking goes that you're watching football, you're having a good time, positive. Oh, Coca-Cola's there. Oh, Coca-Cola equals positive. Like, I don't know if there's ever any study that backs that up, but I think you could get to a similar sort of situation here where you liken the Scot Rail experience to Taylor Swift somehow, and they both sit in that happy part of your brain. I don't know if that's, you know, what they're going for, but I think that's the potential outcome of this stuff. Just really, really well done. It's one of the best executed sort of Taylor Swift piggybacks I think I've seen.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's like I said, it was just done so well. And I think as well, honestly, I've never been a person whose first thought is to call a taxi. That's just never been in me. So I'm always shocked of how many people I know and how many friends I have who their first instance is not to walk, not to get the bus, and not to get the train. It is to get a cab. And that always really, I was like, whoa. And now I do wonder how much this is also true of Edinburgh, and how much they were potentially trying to be like, these people who can't get a taxi because it's going to be so congested, it's going to be so expensive, who are looking for an alternative. They've positioned themselves as, hey, we get you and we're an alternative. And then those people who maybe before would have just got a taxi will be like, oh, actually, no, I'm going to go with Scot Rail. It's almost like they maybe even didn't know it was an option. And then they've presented themselves as the best option in this scenario, which is, very, very smart.
Dale, Edinburgh native, what's your opinion of Scot Rail?
My opinion of Scot Rail is actually not too bad. I don't take it often, so I don't really have much of a frame of reference to compare it to anything else. But it has been really interesting to kind of be an observer and seeing it all happen around, like just to see the streets. If you're not familiar, Edinburgh has an annual, a whole bunch of different festivals, and one of the most notable ones is called Edinburgh Fringe, which is where a lot of people come to do theatre, shows, comedy, music, you name it. And during that season, it's unbelievably busy. Like, it's just left, right, and centre. You cannot walk down some of the main streets of Edinburgh and roads because it's just crammed full of people. So to see how it compared to that was very similar kind of vibes. I saw the social element of, in particular, sure, Edinburgh Trams do fantastic numbers this past week as well, to see how they've like leaned into it more, because I think what they've done here is do some competitor research. So in a way, like, this Swiftonomics thing is not a new phenomenon. Like, it's well documented, like how much money can be made for the cities that are hosting these gigs. They estimated it should be somewhere between 100 and 200 million in additional unexpected revenue generation through tourism, specifically around this 3-day event, which is phenomenal. What I think they may have done here is look to what other cities in the US or other places around the world have done to generate that additional revenue and utilize social, and just gone, well, if they did this, maybe we can piggyback and do the same thing. Or they didn't do this, that looks like an opportunity. Like, I saw Edinburgh Trams, because I just so happened to have a connection who works at Edinburgh Trams on my LinkedIn. They had like 1 million views across all of their social platforms just within like a 4 or 5 day stretch. 285,000 people saw them on TikTok, like huge numbers. And they just knew exactly what to do at the right time, like leaning into the platform, and instead of being like, we're Edinburgh Trams and this is what we do, they were actually like, they had people on the tram, the ticket collector dancing to Taylor Swift, stuff like that, just like knowing exactly what to do based on what other people have done before you, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. I think that's been the most interesting aspect of it. It's like following what other people do it in your own way, but instead of making it about you, make it about everything that's happening around you. So it has been pretty interesting, and some fantastic numbers and results for those.
There was definitely some stuff I saw, like, I enjoyed this because I'm a bit of a nerd, but like Scot Rail broke down the poster and like which trains were on the poster and why they were on there, or like the different eras, and that just got so much less engagement. And they posted like a roundup video of all the things that happened over the weekend, and that got like still a lot of engagement, but not as much as the other stuff. And it really showed that it was like, when they kind of started talking about themselves, or sort of it was post event, there wasn't really that same, like, people weren't as enthusiastic about that kind of stuff. So I think finding that balance is really important. But then for some people, I really liked reading about the different trains that were featured on the thing, and just I thought that was really curious. But yeah, I think, don't milk it, I think, is another thing. Is like, they could still be going on about, this happened with the Taylor Swift thing and whatever, and still making jokes and stuff, and using the lyrics, and if it's not relevant, then people will just be like, whatever. And then people will come and be like, okay, where's the energy for the football then, because you've just done all this for Taylor Swift. So there are some bits of this that are a tiny little bit risky, but there are some people who will always moan no matter what you do. So I think it's just making sure that you're aware of that as well. If you did start to run a campaign based on a current event that was for a very niche audience, like that's 38,500 people that we're calling a niche audience here, as well as people like myself who are like the opposite end of the country to Edinburgh, but still thought this campaign was really cool and still thought it was neat as a Taylor Swift fan. But I think if you do want to target a niche, like, don't be worried if there's some people who are like, oh, what about my football game? Like, it's not really about you right now, so we'll have stuff for you later. Just reply to them in the way that you normally would, and, you know, offer them the same advice. Don't be like, we're talking about Taylor, shut up, football Larry. You know, still reply to them, but, like, you know, just don't let that dishearten you, because there are a lot of people that will really enjoy what you're posting, as was shown by people posing with the posters at, you know, the station, or when they posted a thing being like, oh, the calm before the storm, or like once all the traffic had kind of gone through and they had an empty station, then people were like, oh, post what it looks like later tonight when the concert kicks out, like really intrigued to see how busy it is. You know, people were like weirdly invested in stuff like that. So yeah, I think, but you'll see there's posts that they made that did really well, posts they made that they flopped, but they post enough that they could sort of test things out and see what resonated. Like, they saw people love the poster, we're going to post more of the poster. People love the trains in the rain with Taylor Swift lyrics, let's do more of that. But they didn't like X, Y, and Z, so let's not do that, you know? Like, yeah, it was very smart, very just well played. Scott Rail, well played.
The last thing on this before we go on to the final story, I would say that I think they've done this in the right way of looking at it as a brand exposure, brand reach, brand awareness campaign, but also use it as a bit of an experimental campaign. And I imagine there'll be a lot of posts or work that they've done. They can go, actually, you know what, that worked out more better than we expected, or that didn't work. We can now take that into the next campaign that we're doing for, you know, rugby union or whatever big event comes up. They'll be like, do you know what, this worked last time, at least we have that experimental kind of thing in the back pocket to say, well, you weren't sure before, now we know, let's do it next time around, and you've got a better buy-in because you've got the evidence to show it. So yeah, all around a pretty successful campaign from what I read in here. So that was a good one. Who's ready to hear about Apple's developer conference?
No, it's fun. It would be fun to hear about it, Dale. I think it's really great that you're speaking about it as somebody who isn't like into Apple, because myself and I believe Tim as well are quite into Apple. So I think it's quite good that you're sort of talking about it. Your rose tinted glasses are off. Your apple shaped glasses are off. Which I think is great.
I'm not like anti-Apple or anything. It's just, you know, I actually love a lot of what Apple do. I love, especially their marketing, their brand work is exceptional. I don't think there's anybody really that does it better. Like Jess, you mentioned yesterday about how simple their slides are, if we want to call them slides, but in their like presentation, like they communicate so much with so little is a huge, you know, training platform book. Just go and study what they do and you learn a lot if you kind of deep dive into it. Anyway, let's get into the story. So the warnings for the Apple's developer conference. So it's called WWDC, Worldwide Developer Conference. The main kind of thing was for the first hour of the 2-hour keynote that I watched was, here's something that Android or Google has done, we're going to do it too. So there's a lot of that, a lot of Android did it. So I was following the conversation in MKH D's Discord community. I was like following what people were saying, and it's like Apple fan people, there's Android fans, and just seeing what they're saying, and it's a lot of like, oh my god, that's so cool from the Apple people, and we've had that for years from Android fans. It happens every year. Every time I follow this stuff, always happens. So that was the first hour, but after that, there was starting to be little mentions of intelligence. So when you're coming at it from they've got to be talking about AI this time around because everybody else has released their stuff. Surely you've got something groundbreaking to share now. They did in the second half of their keynote talk about Apple Intelligence. So Apple Intelligence is their marketing for AI. They decided we're going to call it Apple Intelligence because, from my understanding of it, is that they appreciate that their customers probably aren't the super into it AI people. They just go into a shop, they get a phone, they just want the best one for them. They're probably not studying every single thing. They're just in, out, they just know what they want because it's so clear to them through the marketing and advertising that Apple do. Like, top quality, just works. That's the whole thing with Apple. And yeah, it's really interesting to see that they've taken that approach with the AI stuff too. And they're talking about it in terms of like, AI is already everywhere, but you don't really know it. Like, you probably don't appreciate how much it's helping already. So it's here in this app and you didn't really realize. We don't talk about it in that way. Like I know there's a bit of a meme about how Apple talk about machine learning rather than AI. They're trying to avoid using that. So they started to talk more about Apple Intelligence, how it's kind of in every piece of the software somewhere. And they started to talk about personal intelligence, which is where they try to make it customized to you. Lots of discussions about privacy and make sure your data is looked after and you're not leaking anything to any other tools. And these large language models, these LLMs, are not relying upon your data to then be sent elsewhere around the web. The main kind of thing here was like they're taking very small baby steps to roll stuff out, unlike an open AI when they do a keynote or short marketing event and they're like, here's like 50 things you can do now. None of them are useful, but here's 50 things you can do now. And Apple's was more like, we made the text a little bit neater for you when you write on a write in a notes app. So for example, you write something in a notes app and the AI, if we want to call it that, Apple Intelligence, will just make it a little bit neater. So it's like tiny little things like that, like not massive changes, but it is going to be everywhere. So it's coming to notifications to kind of sort your notifications by priority and decide, well, this is more important. This message from somebody close to you is more important than this Duolingo notification, so it will just reorder it rather than just being time-based. Or in your email, it will automatically sort them into 4 different categories. So we've got primary and transactions, updates, which is all your social stuff, and then promotion. So very similar to Gmail. We're going to get back to that as well. But it's going to decide, okay, these emails go here and these ones are more important. They'll go at the top. It's also in there for like writing, helping you like refresh an email. If you've used any AI tool, you've probably seen that creep in everywhere. That will just help you to rewrite stuff. But again, not like, here's this huge writing functionality. It's like, you can do this and that's it. On to the next thing. The other part of this was also when speaking to Siri, which is their assistant on the phone. I believe it's on the watch as well. I'm sure Justin, Tim can clear that up.
It goes off all the time when I don't want to talk to it. It's so funny. Which hopefully the AI will mean it stops doing that.
Fingers crossed. The upgrade for Siri, that's getting a big upgrade. That's not an upgrade. It's like, it was very gentle. It felt very like a gentle upgrade. Like we're giving it a refresh. One part of it was that you could ask it to do a few actions and it would be able to. It was nothing wild, no like personal assistant in the same way that OpenAI's one will just like talk to you and have a chat and so on. It was more like, if you need that extra bit of assistance with something, it can help you get there, but otherwise it's not like, groundbreaking, I would say. It's not too dissimilar to what AI following people would have heard so far. But the extra bit in there was that it was going to ask ChatGPT. If you can't figure it out on device, it can't figure out how to help you, it would just say, would you like me to ask ChatGPT instead? Which is quite new. I don't think any other devices are offering that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. It could go in lots of different directions, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that pulls in content from around the web. So if you're asking a question about something and then it says, would you like to ask ChatGPT, you'll be able to do so. But is it going to pull in links or is it just going to be a text-based thing? That's going to be quite important for anybody who does create content for the internet to know if you're going to be pulled in there or not. So I think that's one we'll have to come back to when we can test it and see how our business is and how our marketing is impacted. But I think the main piece of impact that I saw from this was the email part. Now, it probably may feel small, but for me, feels a bit more dangerous in terms of how our email marketing delivery could be impacted. So I mentioned before about how it will Siri or the Apple Intelligence within the apps will sort through and prioritize your emails depending on what it is. You've got these 4 categories of primary, so just about everything, transactions for any orders you've made or purchases for plane tickets, things like that. Updates, so that's all of your social updates, or newsletters will probably find their way in there as well. And then promotions, so your traditional marketing emails. Come back and buy this. You add it to the cart. Here's a discount, or we're running a sale, and so on. That's where my brain was like, "Oh my god," because anybody doing email marketing must be thinking, if my email's not getting seen, that is it. Not necessarily game over, but game reduction, I guess, like performance reduction. So yeah, I haven't had time to go and speak to our email team, but I have spoken to them previously about how a similar filtering system in Gmail works. So they also have something where there are primary and forums is one, social is one, promotions is one. How all of the emails get diverted to promotions. All the ones that we write, us marketers, they always get sent over there. What you should do about it. So some of their recommendation was about like getting to the point with your emails. If you know your email is going to get sent off to promotions, you have to think you've got probably very little chance of being, well, not very little chance of being seen, because apparently 45% of people who check their emails check the promotions tab, which just blew my mind. I thought it'd be less than that. But if people are going to check there, your title, the subject line of your email has to be bang on. Like nobody can resist clicking on it. And then when they come in, just get to the point and just show people what they came to see. So if you're saying summer sale, tell people what the sale is. Don't go about, we're pleased to announce that this thing is coming and blah, blah, blah. Just get to the point. And that's the note that I had shared with me. But also make it just very sales centric. So just talk about what people can get. Don't be like, we're pleased to announce this new range and stuff. Just say like, here's a thing. There's very few of them. Get it before they sell out. Be very sales orientated. And yeah, the other element was make it look amazing, so that people kind of looking forward to opening your emails a little bit, or when they do open them, they're just like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's not too plain. It's not regular text. Your mileage may vary. Text might work great for you depending on your industry, but try and make it look pretty good. Otherwise people are just not going to look forward to opening them in the future. So it's a case of like putting value in there in different ways, and looking good can have some value to it as well. So yeah, really interesting. I think the email, there will obviously be long-term impact with the release of Apple Intelligence, if we want to call it that, with the Siri upgrade. I noted that the Siri is getting its own API or SDK. I don't really know the terminology because I'm not a developer. But that to me sounds like if there's an API in there, companies like Uber and stuff will be able to seep their way in later to directly connect to Siri and be like, order me a cab, and it will do it. But the main one was like, if I have to take immediate action today, was the email part. First thoughts.
I agree with you that not a lot of the changes here are actually sort of net new. So email filtering, Outlook has done this for years. Gmail has done this for years. This feels like sort of Apple catching up. I think the photos thing's already well established. The genius, I think, about this, which is the same with all Apple announcements, is that they've taken sort of familiar concepts and they've packaged them and branded them in a way that I know what they're doing. I know the functionality behind this, and I still can't help getting excited. The way they brand each of these features, the way they give it its own logo, the way they focus on the benefits. I don't know if you noticed in the announcement how often someone picks out a phone from their back pocket and just shows you how it works. They're not talking about parameter count. They're not talking about where it sits on the MMLU score and how advanced the model is. They're not talking about any of that. Like, if we think back to the Gemini announcement where they're showing you drawing on a piece of paper, the maths equations and stuff. Yeah, that's cool. But then Apple's just like, yeah, on the iPad app, look, you can draw out your things and it shows you exactly what the angles here are. And it just makes it so much more real. And their headline for it was AI for the rest of us, which I just think is so brilliant. If we contrast this with the Microsoft AI PC announcement that was a couple weeks ago, right, where Microsoft shows that there's this PC and it looks at everything that you do and it sees everything that you're doing on the screen, and then it's your Copilot, and people are like freaking out, oh my god, this thing's terrible, it's spying on me the whole time. Apple essentially rolled out the same functionality, but they objection handled before by going deep in the privacy piece, by rebranding I can't remember what it's like, privacy-centric servers or whatever. They created this whole new concept to basically park your objections in there. Handled. don't worry. Now let's show you what you can do. And nobody's freaking out. I mean, Elon Musk is freaking out, but nobody else is freaking out about the sort of the privacy aspects of this, even though the functionality is exactly the same. And I just think this is one of my favorite Apple announcements ever, because one of my favorite hobbies when I was maybe sort of mid 2010s was to go back and watch the very early Apple announcements, because the tech is completely standardized. You're not in love with the product anymore. You can see how they pitched the original iPod, and you're not in love with the magic of it. You just see the pure marketing layer. You just see how they present it. And I think it's the same with this one. It's just a really beautiful marketing case study for how you share relatively simple, familiar concepts in a way that makes national news, because now all of a sudden they're relatable to people. So I'm really excited, even though I technically shouldn't be, by all of this stuff, and I can't wait for it to come to my iPhone and play with it. Go Apple!
Yeah, I think that's one of the first things I said this morning, was that I felt like it felt like a much more accessible event compared to maybe like the Google event and stuff. Like, it felt like I understood a lot more of what was being said, despite me feeling like I'm quite, up there in terms of AI knowledge. With the Google stuff, I'll just be like, what? Or I'm just struggling to concentrate because I'm like, this is just going over my head so much. But I think there's also like a conversation to be had here, almost departing from AI and Apple, about like consumer adoption and how you can handle that if you're releasing a product or a service that is solving a problem that people don't know they have, or that is very groundbreaking that people are going to be really worried about. And I think, Apple do it really well in terms of, like Tim said, they really handle those objections. They look at all the headlines surrounding this thing and they see, okay, people are really worried about privacy, or they're worried about being spied on, or they're worried about their data being used to train an AI model. And then they make that like almost the theme of the piece. Like, I don't even know how many times I saw that apple shape with the padlock that comes in and locks in. And that was like, I was like, wow, they're really going on about this. But it's because they know that that's like a concern. And there's real good, like, almost counter to that, really good listening going on. So they understand, they're doing social listening. And I think there's definitely a lesson here for anybody who is about to launch something and they've sort of said the words out loud, oh, I just don't think our audience is ready for this. Like, that it's good, but you just feel like your audience isn't quite ready for it. Then maybe think about the reasons why they're going to say they're not ready, and figure out how you can sort of move around that to then sort of leave you on top. I mean, I still made faces when Apple said that they're doing AI imagery. I still thought that was naff. And I was like, if they would have told me exactly where those images came from, would have completely have changed my perception. If they were like, all these images are trained on our own imagery, all things we paid for. Apparently they paid Shutterstock, and they've worked with Shutterstock, and they've had a deal with them, and they've paid them a lot of money for access to their imagery. But I think that would have like changed my perception of that. That's the kind of the only criticism that I have in terms of the AI piece. But me, as soon as it comes to AI imagery and stuff, I'm like ready to fight. But if they would have just maybe, and I think a lot of people are though. I think a lot of creatives use Apple products. They're kind of almost known as like, anytime you were going to a design studio, it would be full of MacBooks or the ones that go on the desk. I can't remember what they're called. iMacs, that's the one. Thank you, Tim. But and like people using the iPad. Like, I went for a tattoo the other week and she got out her iPad Pro, and I was like, oh, the weapon of the tattoo artist, because every tattoo artist I know uses the iPad to do their artwork. I use the iPad to do my artwork. So does my partner. Like, it's, so I feel like maybe they could have done a bit more of a piece about that if they were going for that privacy option. They're kind of saying, oh, we already did this, but we're not going to steal from you, but we're going to steal from everyone else.
Shutterstock PLC. Who cares about them?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Another thought that popped into my brain. I feel like not a lot of people have been talking about this, but maybe it's just because I thought it was fun and cute. But they're doing Gen emoji, so you can AI generate your own emojis. And there's a lot of people who aren't interested in this. I use all sorts of weird and wonderful emojis, and I know there's a lot of businesses who may use an emoji as kind of part of their branding. Like, I'll get a lot of emails where they always have the same emoji at the start, like the morning brew always have that coffee cup emoji. But obviously there is some trouble if the device doesn't support it. You just get a square, and I think that might be what happens with the gen emoji. But if it doesn't, there's real scope for businesses to be making some cool little quirky emojis that look like they're straight from Apple and connecting that to their brand and attaching that to all their marketing materials. And then if their email does end up in the promotions tab, you scan and you look for their generated emoji, and then you go, yeah, that's the one I want to look at. Boom. So maybe that's just me. I'm just excited that I can make emojis of my chinchillas, if I'm honest. But apparently it won't even work on my phone anyway. So I was like, I'm over it now. But that was my main thing, is I thought it was quite fun to be able to make little emojis. And for them to be, it was obvious they were trained on Apple emoji artwork and that's what was being drawn from. But yeah, anyway, that's all my thoughts. Thanks for coming to my Apple TED talk.
Okay. I'm probably not going to pick this particular one for lessons of the week. The one lesson I would personally take from this is that sometimes you don't need to be first to market. You just need to be best to market. Like Apple have just decided we're going to do this in the best way possible, not be the first one. And they're probably going to get a decent, response in terms of product sales and revenue generation after this. So yeah, one to keep in mind. Okay, lessons for this week. I really can't choose. The Swifty one is good. The let's stay clear of politics, even if there's some good lessons from there. Sorry, Tim.
I don't know. I think that's a really good one. I think we can talk about it even without necessarily talking about politics,
all right, okay,
in a way. Right. I think that's a really good one, Dale. I don't want you to be afraid to use it as a example because it talks about politics. I don't think that's the message here at all.
Fair enough. Do you know what we should have done when we started the dojo? We should have kept a tally to see whose stories were picked to be turned into tasks the most. I'd be really curious. Like, if anyone who's listening is thinking about how many wins each of our hosts has under the belt, it'd be really good to know. But whilst you're there tallying away on your spreadsheet, head over to exposureninja.com/review and request a free website marketing review for your business, and we'll show you exactly how you can improve your marketing and get the results you need by the end of this year, fingers crossed, and going into next year and the year after that and the year after that. So exposureninja.com/review. Jess, what task can marketing managers take from this story about political marketing?
Yeah, my whole thing about this is just really understanding your audience. Like, make sure you're so clear. Make sure you have buyer personas in place. There's a lot of businesses that don't have buyer personas. They'll just say like, oh, we want to target this gender within this age group who lives here and earns this much money and wants to buy our thing. And that just it doesn't do the mileage that it used to. So I think look at what you have, see if you need to build, well, you do need to build buyer personas, but also if you do have buyer personas, just check that they're still a good fit. It's okay to not always, like, maybe you need to adapt them, or maybe you need a new one if you started offering something new and noticed that it's really popular with a different audience. So yeah, double check them buyer personas, please. Right now.
Consider it done. Tim, which tasks can business owners take from your story?
Oh, I've been trying to rack my brain as soon as it became apparent that this story is being chosen. I would like business owners to go and have a play with. I think the idea of a manifesto is really interesting. A manifesto seems to essentially be a list of policies designed, like Jess said, to resonate with certain segments of the customer base. So I'd be really interested to see what happens if you took a blank sheet of paper and went away for a couple of hours and thought about what your business manifesto is. Like, what are the pieces of functionality or the benefits that apply to different segments of your audience, which you could emphasize in your marketing to these different groups? Because I think the job of a political party is a really difficult marketing task. You've got to appeal to basically a huge range of target customers, all with massively diverse needs. And if we can do even half of that job as a business, we can potentially expand our target audience by thinking of it as a collection of niches, all which need their own specific messages and components of our manifesto. So it's not really a specific task. I just want people to go and have a play with this. I'm going to go and have a play with it anyway and see what you come up with.
I love that. Absolutely.
That's really cool. Yeah. Nice one, Tim.
Okay, well, we don't have any quickfire questions for this week, so I'm going to ask you a different question instead before we head away. Tim, which marketing struggle keeps you up at night?
So it's not really a marketing struggle, but personal admission, I live in fear of AI announcements. So I'm really excited by all of these AI announcements, but every one that comes out, I'm in the back of my mind thinking, is something that somebody is going to announce going to absolutely destroy the world that we know. And I'm not talking about like, is it going to create super intelligence that wipes out humanity? I'm talking about like, our website's going to become obsolete. Is digital advertising going to change, profoundly? And I think as a business owner, I always have thought of myself as like the lead meerkat, the one that's standing on top of the hill looking for threats and stuff like this. And AI is just like this omnipresent everywhere threat that nobody really knows what it's capable of. It's like this huge dark cloud that's above you. So you're trying to, oh, where's the threat coming from? Oh, crap. And you never know when this thing's going to start raining on you or anything. So I've personally found that very, I don't know if it's stressful is the word, but certainly, around the time of OpenAI announcements, around the time of Google announcements, it's just a lot to take in. And I think the internal RAM is running really fast and the fans are blowing the whole time. And it's quite draining. So yeah, that's my roundabout answer.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see if we can take that into some future marketing content as well. See if we can help people deal with that fear and that struggle.
I need to change my answer now because mine's quite similar to Tim's, but I think I've got something else to talk about.
So I want to hear that.
No, I mean, what I was going to say is just that it's the same kind of thing, right? It's like, I always feel a bit conflicted about AI and its capabilities. Like I'm really passionate about AI as a support and being able to assist you to do the things that you really want to do and the things that you love and that you enjoy. There's like a joke that goes around every now and then that's like, AI is making our art so that we can like do our spreadsheets or whatever, and that's kind of what it boils down to me. So I always have this like conflicting emotions on how I feel about it, because I feel like there is a lot of ethical issues with it that I just hate. And then there's also some really fantastic stuff. Like I remember reading a story about a chap who was really fantastic tradesman. Like he was quite young, I think. And but he really struggled just with like dyslexia and things like that. And it meant that his responses to people who were inquiring about stuff just came across really like badly. And it really sucked because that wasn't what his work was like. So he worked with someone who built him an AI system so that he could, if he wrote, "Yeah, sounds great, mate," it would change it to be like, "Hey, great to hear from you. Yes, I can do that time." Or "I'm confirming that I'll be there at 1 p.m. on that day to do the work. Look forward to it." And I know it seems like a bit of a stretch, and maybe some people would say, well, they don't really care about that, or I don't care if the tradesperson is like that. But there are a lot of people that do. And so I really support it and like it for that aspect. And I use it a lot to support me. When I'm having like bad brain fog days or I'm just really struggling, I can use AI to I'll be like asking AI questions that I know the answer to, but I just can't get the words together. And so that's incredibly helpful. But then it's like, as an artist, I see all these things. I signed up to an email training course and I logged into the first thing. There was a picture of a compass at the top. And it was obviously AI generated because all the letters were wrong and there was like 20 letters around it. And it just immediately makes me go, oh, so you can't be bothered to pay an artist to do this, but you're going to make money from this course. Like it immediately sours it for me. Or like you couldn't find a picture of a compass on Canva for free or even on Google for free. Like, do they think it makes them look better? I don't know. So yeah, as you can tell, I feel very conflicted about AI. So that's the struggle that keeps me up at night, I suppose.
Interesting. Well, I think if you go to our YouTube channel, head over to YouTube and search for Exposure Ninja, you'll see a lot of content about AI and how you can utilize it for your marketing and kind of, push those fears down a little bit. They're always going to be there, but if you keep coming back to our podcast, you'll hear more about how you can adapt as things change as well. So go to exposureninja.com/podcast to keep up with our episodes. There are 300 plus about all things SEO, PPC, email marketing, digital marketing in general. Head over there now. Pretty please. Well, thanks to the two of you for coming to this week's podcast. And again, if you want to hear more, you can go to exposureninja.com/podcast. And we'll see you all next week. Take care, all. Bye.
Bye.
Right.